friends, this is Andrew Phipps. Welcome to our Phipps-Faith-Family-Freedom broadcast. We always like to have guests that can bring truth to the narrative and folks that have credibility. And today, it's a very great honor for me to have Pastor Scott Cianciolo and his wife, Dr. Teresa Cianciolo. They're going to be a part of our broadcast for a few minutes. Dr. Cianciolo, Miss Teresa, has visited Ukraine, I believe, about 29 times. She's worked there with children, displaced children, orphan children, and much, much more. She's been a very integral part of Ukraine's operation for some time in the humanitarian area, I should say. And Dr. Cianciolo, I will start with you tonight, and then Brother Scott, you can get in on the dialogue. I want you to give us some of your background, if you will, please, about your being a part of the Ukraine people for so many years.
Well, it started by adopting twins with Down syndrome that we adopted. And when we were adopting, we went to the orphanages, and so many of the children would clamor to get on our laps and to be with us and just to be held. That's all they wanted, was to be held. And we just knew our mission in Ukraine was not over. And we came home. We started going to ministries that had summer camps for children with disabilities in the orphanage. It was the only time children with disabilities were allowed orphanage or out of an institution, were the times they were allowed to go to camp. And so we hosted many camps. And then we went into I went into teaching parents how to work with their children on the developmental level, teaching about autism and Down syndrome, bringing individuals with me that had a great deal of expertise in physical therapy and day programs, and just kind of educating so that our goal was always that to make sure that families could keep their orphan children. They didn't have to give them to an orphanage. They could keep them at home, keep them in their communities, have supports in the communities, have speech, OT, PT, and be able to keep their children in the home. And that was our mission, was how do we keep the orphan child in the home?
This is a very broad topic, and it's kind of it's open-ended. What can you tell us? And then, Brother Scott, I was up and visited your church and stayed in your home there in Vermont a few years back. But Teresa, if it's all right if I call you that, what can you tell us about your experience with the Ukrainian people? Who are they? What can you tell us about them?
We have such a vast experience from some families who are broken because they have children with special needs, and at times are blamed for that, and feel very discouraged and that there's no hope for their children. And we have such great specialists who are desperate to learn how to work with children and keep them in the communities and get them into schools and get them included, get them into their communities. And so we see such a vast difference of so many different individuals in Ukraine, but our heart was for the orphan child and for orphan directors and people in the staffing to work with ministries to how to work with children. Scott had such a great ministry to the churches and the pastors, and how to include children in the church and how to get pastors into the homes and work with our children. Our children were the first two children included in the Christian school in Ukraine. We brought them back and we lived in Ukraine. Include them right into the Ukraine culture, and it was such a joy for us. And we share a great deal of friendships in Ukraine and ministries, and we're just heartbroken over the current circumstances in Ukraine.
Scott, what can you tell us about? I know you've heard your wife many times talk about it, and you've talked probably endless hours about the Ukrainian situation. What's your perspective? I know that's a very open-ended question, but what's your perception of what's going on in the Ukraine today? I mean, it's in the news, obviously, and the president and vice president and their encounter there with President Zelensky. What can you tell us about it, brother?
Well, I could tell you, based on our personal experiences as we were living there right before the war broke out and the tension that was building, and as well as some the relationships we had. We built friendships with people, close ministry relationships with people who have lost their lives on the front lines in the war. We could tell you that the situation for the soldiers is difficult, to say the least. They're not well trained for fighting. Oftentimes they're handed really just a gun and ammunition and anything else they need to protect themselves on the battlefield. So much as a helmet and a vest and all their equipment that they would need, that's given to our military so they could be well equipped.
Do you feel like that the United States government has done a lot, has done about as much as we can do to help?
I absolutely do. In fact, I think we've done more than our fair share to help them. I do believe that.
I believe too that people we've invited 286,000 Ukrainians into the United States. We equipped them with new places to live, with medical care, with housing, with food, and got them a new life to live for this time when they had no other options. Some families that came to us in the House of Mercy, some of them came when their houses were occupied by Russia. And so not only do I think that we have given a great deal of our resources, but I think Americans have opened up their hearts and their lives and their families to Ukrainians as well.
It will soon be time once again to set sail with your hosts Andrew and Shirlene Phipps. Soon it is the 2026 Singing at Sea Cruise, January 26th through January 31st, 2026. On board, you will enjoy music from 30 Southern gospel groups. You will enjoy 4 outstanding preachers, dine on delicious food, and it is a complete Christian family cruise. The bars and the casinos are all closed. To reserve your spot on this year's Singing at Sea Cruise, call Andrew Phipps at 744-4239, 765-744-4239, or find out more at Phipps-Faith-Family-Freedom.org. Keep in mind, this cruise sells out quickly. Just a small deposit will reserve your space, but act quickly. And again, the phone number to call is 744-4239, 744-4239 for the 2026 Singing at Sea Cruise, January 26th through the 31st, 2026, with your hosts, Andrew and Shirlene Phipps.
If you'd like to have any of our products, we do have a Faith, Family, and Freedom handbook. We have some DVDs. We did one with Pastor Jim Scudder in Washington, D.C. a little over a year ago. It's called Can You Find God in D.C.? I think you will enjoy the beautiful programming that was done in the Jefferson and Lincoln Memorials and other places. If you want any of our products, just call us or get in touch with us as would be indicated there on the screen. And friends, I am so glad that we can incorporate into our Faith, Family, Freedom broadcast, whether it's podcast or whether it's television, some good singing. I happen to enjoy the flavor that we call Southern gospel singing. I like singing that has a good message that can resonate with the listener. I like music that's harmony, and whether it's a family group, whether it's a trio, quartet, good singing is just a wonderful blessing to each one. It's a comfort and it gives us some joy and peace. And I think music is such a integral part of each of our lives. You know, you can be going through the day and having maybe not everything going as you would like, but to hear a good song, it just puts a step forward. It just puts a step that makes you want to kind of just relax and enjoy. And that's what good singing does for us. It's music for the soul. And I hope you enjoy this singing.
People say, when you go retire? Well, folks, I've come too far to turn back. Listen to this great old song.
again. There is nothing behind me. All the pleasures I used to love have all faded from view. There's a new day ahead for me. My heartache is over. You see, I left it at Calvary, where my new life began. I've come too far to look back. My feet have walked through the valley. I've climbed mountains, crossed rivers, desert places I've known. But I'm nearing the home shore. The redeemed are rejoicing. Heaven's angels are singing. I've come too far to look back. Look around, there's unhappiness. Some see no reason for living, 'cause life will give you a broken dream, full of heartache and fear. Turn around, don't look back again. Face the new day before you. Place your heartache in Jesus' hand. He will mend broken dreams. I've come too far to look back. My feet have walked through the valley. I've climbed mountains, crossed rivers, desert places I've known. But I'm nearing the home shore. The redeemed are rejoicing, and heaven's angels are singing. I've come too far to look back. But I'm nearing the home shore. The redeemed are rejoicing. Heaven's angels are singing. I've I've come too far to look back. Too far to look back.
Hey friend, this is Joni Phipps with Kinsman and Company, and I design and create King James scripture products for personal and church use. If you're looking for King James gifts or items for your church, please check out our website. It's kinsmanandcompany.shop. And if you've shopped with us before, we want to thank you so much for your patronage. By shopping with Kinsman and Company, you are helping to support missionaries worldwide. And if you've shopped before and you haven't been there in a while, come look at our new products. Thanks.
Is the government in power right now? Is it a dictatorship, or is Zelensky, is he a crook?
Well, I could say that I could say that right now, if he's not allowing elections to be held, or if he is mandating his own power, then I couldn't help but think that he would appear to be acting as a dictator would act in terms of his election, in terms of that. But I wouldn't necessarily outright call him that.
Yeah. We've heard of conscripting happening, where people are men are being taken off the streets and people are being forced into the military.
Has he hurt your operations, your humanitarian? You're trying to help orphans and children, autistic and so on. You ought to be commended, but has what we would call the government that is in power, do they hinder? Do they restrict? Do they impede? Do they keep you from doing what you feel as a Christian that you ought to do?
You know, this topic breaks my heart a great deal because it's so near and dear to God's heart to take care of the widows and orphans and their affliction. And we always wanted to go there, and always we visited dozens of orphanages to be with the orphan child in their affliction. And the government never stopped us, but they are not taking care of their orphan children. And it was always our goal to come in and to teach and train and to work with the government and with the orphanages to make a better life for our children. I do know that the number of orphans is astronomical now, and I know that conditions are at times deplorable, and they're over. There's not enough staffing. There's not enough supports, and this at times has grieved us a great deal. We always wanted to be part of the solution and be God's hands and feet and to go in and take care.
When was the last time you were there, if I might ask?
I went in 6 months after the invasion, and I went with several organizations. Blessings International gives out medications, and we went in with a team and brought thousands of pounds of medications across the border from Poland into Ukraine. We had 18 spots in Ukraine that we were familiar with, 18 locations and regions in Ukraine where medicine went and supports went to support the troops, to support online, to support our children who had no medication at the time. So we went over with the team. I led a team in I led a team about 4 months after the war started, and I have not been back since.
Do you expect to go back? I know it must be a very, use the word precarious or dangerous type situation for you. Do you anticipate maybe getting to return?
We have our vehicle there, and all our possessions are there. The home that we were working with is there. So all of our heart is there as well. We would like to think we would, but we would really have to make sure that it's safe for our team, make sure it's for our family members, for our board. We would have to make sure that it's safe, and it's our heart's desire.
Has the war created the situation where there are so many orphans, or were there a lot of orphans prior to the war?
Yes, Ukraine's demographics state that there was the highest amount of orphans per capita in the world before the war. So there was over 144,000, over 150,000 orphan children, and it doesn't mean they're orphans because both parents are deceased. They're orphans because for various reasons, if they were born with, especially those who are born with disabilities, they're given over to the orphanages, and their parents sign their parental rights to the state. So they have always had a tremendous, I would call it an orphan crisis.
Yeah.
So before the war, and I can only imagine with all the death from the war, how many more orphans there are.
Hello, friends. This is Andrew Phipps with Phipps-Faith-Family-Freedom, and we're so happy that you have joined us today. Let me give you a good announcement. We are now being broadcast on Spotify podcast, and we hope that you'll find us there. We want to have a lot of very interesting guests. We have had some super guests on our podcast heretofore, and we're looking forward to having people from all walks of life that we think can help us and bring something positive to the narrative of faith, family, and freedom. Look for us on Spotify. This is Andrew Phipps. Brother Scott, how can people around the world help you and Dr. Cianciolo there and others that are mutually engaged, or ministries that are trying to help alleviate the suffering and bring medicine and help and hope to these children? It breaks my heart when I think about these little ones. I've got several great grandkids, and I can't bear it to think, and I must think of how others feel. These little children that don't have a mom and a dad. It's heartbreaking. It really is. And is there anything that we can do? I know we can pray. I know we can do that. And I'm not putting prayer on the bottom shelf. I know prayer is at the top, but are there other things that people that might be aware of our podcast, brother or doctor, that might be able to help in some way? Would you mind to share what those avenues might be?
Well, I think first and foremost, the war's got to stop. There's no way to get in the country outside of the country to be able to get on the ground safely to dispatch anyone into these orphanages. The orphanages are mingled into the cities. Usually they're around Orthodox churches and things. They're usually in those, and they're in these kind of remote neighborhoods and more rural places, so it's hard to dispatch out.
Are you optimistic about the good, maybe that peace can be brought to this country?
Has to be.
Well, I'm always optimistic because I believe the God's will be done. So
Amen.
if God wills the peace to happen, it will happen. So I say that out of faith, and I believe it. I based on the behavior of the Ukrainian president over the weekend, one would think that it's far away still, but who knows? Who knows? I'm proud that I'm proud of what our president and vice president did and said, and how he didn't let President Zelensky hold any cards, so to speak. And I'm just praying that
Yeah.
President Zelensky will have a change of course and come
Yeah.
back to the table along with
Uh,
the rest of the European nations.
We have to have
Doctor,
peace. Like, we have diplomacy. There's no other way around. Like, there is at this time no avenue for Ukraine to win. They've lost, it was a country of 44 million. They're a country of 36 million now. And they've lost a generation of men, and they've conscripted everybody they can into the army. There is no avenue except for diplomacy. And that is such a hard thing to say, because you don't want Ukraine to give up land or give up their rights, but we have to stop. Their young men have to stop dying on the battlefield. And we have some great friends who have died on the battlefield. And I wonder if the 2,000 kilometers that Russia has, was it worth all those men's lives? And it has to end. There has to be some kind of peace.
how many millions did you say that they had lost?
Go ahead.
I believe they've lost over 1 million in the war.
Yeah.
And also, wasn't there 2 more million people that vacated the country?
More
Wow.
So they've lost a.
Yeah. When we were there, it's 44 million, and then they went down to 38 million, and I think they're now at 36 million. So,
Dr. Teresa, may I say something to you? Your tears, your compassion has moved me. The Bible says, and when the Lord, praise his name, saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion. If you had not said another thing in this broadcast, to see your tears and your love has moved me, and I pray God will bring a solution that's pleasing to him. And Brother Scott, thank you for taking time. You have been a blessing to us, and I wish you God's best and Godspeed to both of you.
And we wish you the same too. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I thank you for our friendship as well.
Amen.